We have a short text this morning, one verse of scripture, but you can handle that. You can take that. It's a good one, and I bet you've heard it before, and you probably know it by heart. It's the last verse of Paul's great love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, and it reads like this. And now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is
Hope.
love. That's right, the greatest of these is love. But, I choose this scripture this morning because I want to share something that I suspect you've had sentiments about, and that is sometimes wishing the Bible read differently than it does. You ever wanted it to be a different text, a different way of saying things? Ever wanted to take your pen and do a little editing of the scriptures? You know, Thomas Jefferson did that, one of our presidents. He decided that he would just have his own New Testament. And so he cut out all the pieces that he didn't want, and he edited that, and he published it. Thomas Jefferson Bible. You can get a copy of that. I can understand that sentiment. Every once in a while, there are things in the Bible that I wish said it in a different way. This text that we just read a moment ago, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Certainly love is a great thing. We need it, we want it, we crave it, we give it. It is a beautiful reality in our world. But there come days, there come times, I think, when the great need of the human heart is not so much for love as it is for hope. Because hope is what we have to have if we're going to make it to another day. Hope is that which gets us through the tough times. So we as a community have been through a very, very tough year. And what has sustained us, what's gotten us through, it is always hope. Hope is essential, absolutely essential to living. Sometimes people say, well, where there's life, there's hope. I agree with that. But I think the deeper truth may be that where there's hope, there is life. Because without hope, there can be no life. John Claypool tells a story of an experiment that was done by some scientists around this whole subject of hope. They took two rats. This is kind of an icky experiment, but it happened. Took two rats and dropped them both in identical vats of water, barrels of water. One rat, though, was put into the barrel, and a top was put over a plexiglass top that could see out, but it was trapped. The other rat was put into a barrel, and there was no top put on it. And the social scientists just wanted to see what the reactions of the rats would be. The rat in the vat that was enclosed gave up after 7 minutes of struggle, realizing there was no hope of ever escaping, and quickly drowned. The other rat, with the open top, sensing that perhaps there was a way to get out of that dilemma, perhaps there was a way to escape the water, that rat swam for an incredible 20 hours before the experiment was mercifully ended. That is profound, I think. That is profound. And the point of it is that where there was a perception of hope, then the situation could be made different. Then there was an energy to continue the struggle. So if there's hope in the future, that things will change, that they will get better, there can be power in the present. Hope is the fuel in the engine of the human heart and the human soul and psyche. Hope is a great spiritual asset. What breath is to the physical body, hope is to the human spirit. Hope is what animates us. It's what energizes us. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning and propels us through the day. A minister was relating this experience that he had many, many years ago as a community leader in a community in the 60s, in those turbulent years of rough race relations in America. Still rough race relations, but it was particularly tough in the 60s. And this minister said they had gathered in their community a group of African American and Caucasian pastors to sit down at a table and talk and work out issues together and see if they could bring some sense of peace and progress with the whole arena of race relations. It happened one day that the meeting got very tense and contentious. The black members in the meeting got very angry and they stormed out. And this minister said at that point he felt so crestfallen. He turned to a rabbi who was sitting next to him and said, "I think it's hopeless. I think it's hopeless." And the rabbi said to the minister, who was a lot younger, "Young man, step into my office." And he did. And then the rabbi began to teach this young minister a profound lesson. He said that to the Jew, there is only one unforgivable sin, and that's despair. And then the wise rabbi went on to observe that, humanly speaking, despair is presumptuous. It's saying something about the future that we really have no right to say because we've not been there yet, and we don't know enough. How about that? I think that's profound. We don't know enough to shut down. We don't know enough to quit. We don't know enough to give up. You think about those times in your life. I think about them in my life. When you have been surprised in those past days, as you remember, you looked at a certain situation, you called it hopeless, and then lo and behold, forces you did not even know existed broke through and took you to a new day. You fell in love again. You gave yourself an opportunity to do something that was really a fulfillment of your greatest longing. You learned how to laugh. You learned how to smile again. I am continually amazed at how people survive. The roughest and the toughest and the most dreadful experiences come out on the other side and are able to still sing, able to dance, able to laugh. What makes that happen? It's hope. I once worked in England with a woman who had been a prisoner of Nazi Germany and had suffered through the horrors of the Holocaust. She had the numbers tattooed on her arm, and you could see them there. And yet she was one of the most vivacious and alive people I've ever had the privilege of knowing. I asked her one day, how do you do this? How is it that you're not in some cave of gloom and despair? And she said, because there is a tomorrow that I hope to see. Hope. It is so, so important. And so I'm saying to you, we never know enough to embrace the absolutism of despair. As the rabbi pointed out, to despair is to be downright heretical. You think about it. If God, who created everything out of nothing and can even make the dead come back to life, if God can do that, who are we to set limits on what this kind of potency might yet do in our lives? So I'm saying to you very simply this morning, thank God for hope. And it's hope that gets us through. And that all begs the question, where can hope rise from? How can we be hopeful people? Is there some secret to being an ultimate and permanent optimist, a hopeful person? Well, here are some suggestions, some hints on keeping the hope meter in your life pointed toward the positive. Number one, realize that we should never, ever, never, ever sweat the small stuff. And realize that most of it is small stuff, right? You just think about it. You've faced some tough days. You've gone through some hard nights. You've struggled with issues that didn't have easy solutions. But you're here. You survived. You got up this morning. You were able to put on your clothes, drive your car, get to our church. You made it. And mostly, my experience is, we do make it. The night is never so dark, and the situation never so lost that we don't get through it. Don't sweat the small stuff. Allow time for God. I know that sounds real preachery, doesn't it? Allow time for God. You'd expect me to say that. And yet I'm convinced that we've got to provide for ourselves those moments where we at least give the holy a chance to get at us and to interact with our own spirit. There's a wonderful psalm. I encourage you to go home and read it today. It's Psalm 73. All the psalms are wonderful, but Psalm 73 really speaks to me. It starts out with a guy saying, I really do believe that God's ways are good ways. He says that, I'm paraphrasing. But he doesn't really feel it in his heart that God's ways are good ways. Because he's looking at the world that he's living in and he sees it's just a mess. It's a host of contradictions. And he starts to talk about his world. You can read it in the Psalm. He says, I see the evil people getting fat and sleek and going to the top of the heap, and the good people getting pushed down and pushed back. He says, I see so many things that are not just and right. And he says, this is worrisome to me, and this is wearying my spirit. And I don't know why the world can't run on a better keel than it's running. He says, I cannot make sense out of the way life is. Why do bad things happen to good people? All of this is going through this psalmist's mind. And he says quite candidly, my feet had almost slipped. In other words, I just about chucked it in. I just about given up on this thing called faith. this thing of being a disciple, of following the living God. And then the psalm comes, it's in verse 17, it's a powerful verse. Until, he says, I went into the sanctuary of God. Until I went into the sanctuary of God. In other words, until I found the fullness of God's presence. When we have that presence in our lives, we find a hope that nothing in life can ever overcome. That psalm speaks to me because one day, many years ago, I was about to do a funeral service for a man that I thought the world of. And he and his wife had gone on a short trip, and they had stopped for lunch, and he said he was tired and sleepy, so would she drive? And she got behind the wheel, and they started down the road to their destination, and she was tired and sleepy, and she dozed off and allowed the car to drift into a bridge abutment, and it just took the right side of that car off and killed him instantly. He was a good man. He had been a youth counselor in our church. He had taken my children out on youth retreats. They thought the world of him. And now he was gone, snuffed out. Why? Where do you find something to say in those horrible, horrendous circumstances? Somehow or the other, in my office, Psalm 73, I was about to despair and give up on God. And then I came to that verse, until I went into the sanctuary of God. It's the experience of Job relived. Job, who has so much to talk to God about, so much to argue about, until he finally comes into the presence of God, and then he grows silent. Because in the presence, there is the answer. So how to have hope? Make time, always make time in your life for God. That is so important. And then, number 3, make peace with life's imperfection, for heaven's sakes. Because life never happens like it's supposed to, or like we want it to. But that's okay. It really is. We can get through. We can survive. We live to fight another day. It really is, this is news to some of you, it really is okay for there to be dust in the corners of your house. It really is okay for there to be a wrinkle or two on your bed. It really is okay to have a hamper full of clothes that are dirty that need to be washed. It really is okay, because you will get through that. Suzanne and I, last Sunday, were driving back from a wedding that I officiated at in Alabama, and we left Loxley, Alabama, went into Mobile, and then got on the old Highway 90, all the way from Mobile to Bay St. Louis, because the interstate will drive you nuts, and there's nothing to see out there. So we're driving along, and we're looking at all the stuff that's along the coast road. You've been on that road. The hotels, the casinos, the people on the beach that were doing their thing. And every once in a while, I began to notice these statues in the median. And I got to, what is that? I'd never seen that before. And I realized what it is. Somebody, some great creative artist, has gone over into that section of the community where hurricanes have just devastated the land so many times and killed the trees, but instead of cutting the tree down, let the stump become the raw material for some wonderfully exquisite piece of art. And with a chainsaw and a chisel and a hammer, they have made all sorts of images of art that you can enjoy as you drive along the highway. I thought to myself, that's what hope is. Out of the blemished, there always come things of beauty. Carvings from dead trees, and they are lovely. Go see them. Number 4, adopt the Bob Marley mantra. Every little thing gonna be all right. Every little thing gonna be all right. Live with that. Number 5, realize that it is a lot more fun to live as an optimist than it is as a pessimist. There were 2 little boys, identical twins. They looked alike, but their personalities were diametrically opposite. And their mother was concerned about that. One little guy was cheerful and up and hopeful all the time. The other one was downcast and sad and didn't want to really do anything. So the mom took the 2 children to a renowned child psychiatrist and said, can you bring these 2 together somehow, get the best of both personalities to mesh and work in their lives? And the doctor examined the boys and said, I think I've got an idea. He took the little pessimist by the hand and walked down the hall, opened a door to a room where there was every conceivable toy that a child that age would want and would enjoy. Pushed the little boy into the room, said, "These are all yours," and shut the door. Enjoy yourself. He took the little optimist down the hall without saying very much, opened the door, and the room was full of horse manure, and he just sort of threw the kid in to the horse poop and shut the door and walked away. The mother and the doctor had a cup of coffee and a visit, and then the doctor said, "Well, let's go see how the boys are doing, if my therapy is working." So they went down the hall to where the little pessimist had been put, where all the toys were, and the kid was sitting in the middle of the floor. He hadn't touched a toy, and he was shaking his head and was saying over and over to himself, "All these toys in here, something's got to break. All these toys, something's got to break." Shut the door, went down the other end of the hall where the little optimist had been put in with the horse manure, opened the door, and the kid is furiously shuffling through all of this horse doo-doo, just going at it. And he's saying to himself, "All this horse poo-poo in here has got to be a pony somewhere. All this horse poo-poo has got to be a pony somewhere." It is a lot more fun to be an optimist than it is to be a pessimist, and hope makes us optimists. And then realize this, love doesn't quit. It is the greatest thing. Even when a chapter of love dies, love sprouts again, and it looks for a way forward. I wrote in a meditation a while back, we sometimes hear in the song, "Love is a rose, it's a flower." It really isn't. It is a hardy weed. It puts down roots, deep roots in tough ground, and it grows where nothing else will. Love finds a way. Hope, you gotta have it. You gotta have it to live. One of the things that I do during the week is direct a nonprofit called Rebuilding Together Baton Rouge. And our job since last August has really been to help people whose homes have been destroyed by floodwaters come back and live in their homes. And we are not professional contractors. We work with good-hearted volunteers, some of whom are more pains in the neck than they are good workers, but nevertheless their spirit is there and we capitalize on that. And what I've thought sometimes going into a house is that it's not the workmanship that we're going to do that's so important, it's the hope that we bring to the family that maybe their life can be put back together again. So this last week, there was a family in the Park Forest subdivision off of Greenville Springs Road named Randall and Rose Walker. And they have two beautiful children. One of them is a special needs child, a little girl, 16 years old. She looks like she's about 8. She has a permanent tracheotomy. Her mother spends as much time driving that child to Children's Hospital in New Orleans as she does here in Baton Rouge because her situation is so fragile and she often has to be taken back to see the doctors in the hospital. Randall and Rose are just about at their wits' end. They lost everything in the flood. They've got a little old narrow FEMA trailer with those two children, one of them special needs, by their house, and they don't have any money to fix the house back. And the little special needs girl keeps saying, "When can I go back to my room?" The bedroom that was her world, that she felt so secure and loved in. And so I went out there with our project director, and we don't have the money to do this house. It's a big house. I said, "Can we do anything?" And the project director said, "Well, maybe we could start putting in the floors." So I said to Rose, "Do you know what floors you want?" "No, don't have any idea, haven't had time to do that." Said to the project director, "What do we do now?" He said, "Floors have got to go in first." I said, "They don't have any floors, they don't know. What can we do?" He said, "Well, we could hang doors, but that's a backwards way of doing it." I said, "Let's hang the doors." And so we got a team of our volunteers out and they started hanging those 19 doors in that house, door by door. And Rose and Randall would see door, door, door. And it was a symbol of hope. Life was going to get better for them. It was coming back. Their house would one day be restored. Something was happening. It made a difference, and they could feel that there was a way forward, one step at a time, a way forward. That's what hope will do for us. One of my favorite texts is in Isaiah 40. "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with the wings of eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." When you think about that text and analyze it, it seems to get it backwards. It starts with the soaring of the eagles, then moves to the running, and then the walking. That's not how life happens most of the time. For most of us, we tell people, you got to crawl before you walk, you got to walk before you run. And yet, the more I've reflected on that text, the more accurate it is as a source of hope and descriptive analysis of life. There was a time in my life, and I suspect in yours, when you thought there was nothing that could stop you. You soared. You were an eagle. You could go to the highest mountain. You could do it all. But you lived a little while, and you got some stiff knees and maybe some eyeglasses and a few trips to a dentist. And you realized, well, maybe I can't soar, but I can still run. I can still get out there and stay up with the best. And you ran. But you lived a little while, and then those knees got even stiffer. And those eyeglasses got thicker. And those teeth got fewer. And today, you're just barely getting it on. 70 years. 70 years. Aches and pains I never knew existed. And you know what? It's enough. One step at a time. They shall walk and not faint. Some days that's the best we can do, and some days that's enough, because we're making it. And that's what hope gives us the ability to do. To keep on keeping on, maybe taking just one step at a time, but at least a step. Hope. This morning, on the anniversary of the great tragedy that has affected thousands of families in this community and people in this church, I raise my glass in a toast to hope and the grace that it gives and that we need for every moment to sustain us every step of the way. Unity, be dopes who are stuck on hope, and we will get through. To God be glory.